So our guest today is Marcos Fava Neves. He is a visiting professor at the Purdue University. Marcos, give us your perspective as an emerging market. Brazil is an agricultural powerhouse, but still is an emerging market. How do you think the pandemic will affect the emerging markets, and what will be the impact on commodity prices?
Well, thank you for the question. It's a pleasure to participate in your program here. And I think we have less flexibility in the emerging markets, in our governments, in terms of budgets, in terms of possibilities of acting, and also in terms of the isolation, because people have to work. Some of these guys, you know, they earn during lunchtime for their dinner, and we don't have the flexibility that, for instance, European countries or the US have in order to isolate people for a longer time. We can isolate, of course, people in the higher income classes in Brazil, medium classes, but when you go to the lower income classes, they really need to work. Of course, the government is acting to give them a monthly support, which can at least make them buy some food, but it's a much more complicated situation. But in the other side, you have the temperature is higher, so maybe there may be a lower infection rate. And I also think, I'm not a doctor or I don't do research in this area, but I think that people that are living in very poor conditions, because they are so much submitted to bacteria and to tough situations, that they may have their immunity may be a little bit, let's say, they could be more prepared to face new diseases than the ones that are more protected, let's say this way. So we don't know yet how will be let's say the performance of the virus in the very poor areas and people that live in very tough conditions. And we don't even know if the virus already went through, you know, and they survived it in terms of having a high immunity, and now they have already conquered the immunity because they had the virus and are okay. So we don't know yet. We face a tough situation in the world of lack of data. You know, everywhere it's new, and we are learning. So I can imagine for the guys in the public positions to take decisions how difficult it is, because you have to balance economy, you have to balance the health, and you have to balance politics. So this triangle makes the decisions very difficult, very sophisticated in terms of the impacts that they can cause.
And for some may be surprising, but in Brazil, the price of beef already suffer with the crisis. Isn't that right, Marcos?
Yes, well, in fact, you have some products that gain it during this new situation, and some of them lost. So at the first moment, we saw beef prices and meat prices, let's say, keeping the path or even gaining a little bit, because there was a kind of behavior to try to buy a little bit more to build up your own inventories at home. So the supermarkets took advantage, and they sold like in Christmas times for 2 or 3 weeks. Now the situation kind of came back to normality, and we have some areas and some social classes already reducing a little bit their consumption because of lack of income, and also because meat, mostly beef in Brazil, is very linked to social events, to gatherings, you know, the barbecues, and they have a strong consumption in the restaurants. But at home, we saw now that beef is losing a little bit of market share I think sales would be now 15–20% lower than in the previous week, let's say, of last year. And part also migrated to cheaper sources of meat like poultry and pork. So for beef now in the internal market, we see a little of a negative impact, which is in some sense being compensated by the Chinese imports and also other Asian countries importing, which is it's a surprise because they're buying relatively more in terms of quantities and also in terms of prices, which just to finish the question, contributes a little bit for the industry here, since the exchange rate now is positive for you to export because the real, our currency, devaluated in this crisis also.
Yeah, one very interesting point that I think it's important to compare is that Brazil, more or less Brazil, but more it's more truth in the case of Argentina. There is not a very flexible labor market. So that is a point where the crisis can last longer. Don't you agree?
Well, in terms of labor, it's true. We have we improved the last 2 or 3 years. The labor laws in Brazil were a little bit modernized, so we have a little more flexibility going on. At this moment, they were even more flexible because government and the unions. They're all trying to keep the jobs. So each part is kind of understanding that you should be more flexible in order to try to maintain and go through the worst period of the crisis. And also what we see in terms of labor is that they are understanding their importance and are continuing to work. And together with the companies, slaughterhouses, adopting the sanitary measures to try to avoid infections in the industrial units, because they employ a lot of people, and if they suffer the risk of shutting down now, that's a disaster for the supply chains of the country and to keep the supermarket shelves full of products. So in terms of labor, just to summarize, I think you're right. It's more flexibility. The flexibility increased now in the crisis. And also what I can tell about labor is that they are in very good, let's say, in fine tuning with the management of the industrial units in order to keep safety and to keep working in these times now that are very risky.
For those who don't know Marcos, he is a very recognized lecturer in Brazil, and he is very good at giving market recommendations. So Marcos, what will be your advice for people in the agricultural sector or the food industry to innovate and get by during this crisis?
Well, first of all, let me separate the answer in 2 parts. The first part is out of our control. That is the issue of the virus and the isolation. For how long will this happen? So we have to pray. We have to ask for this to be better controlled as soon as possible so we can come back to reality. It's going to be a new reality, of course, but we can come back to our activities. And mostly in the US, what needs to happen is the consumption of fuel needs to go up again, because we say we all over the world, and even here in Brazil, when the consumption of fuels come down, we lose a channel of sales of biodiesel, of corn ethanol, cane ethanol. So we lost this market. The whole agriculture lost this market, and we need to conquer it back again. So this is why, in terms of just the economic part of the equation, we should pray for isolation to finish and the activities to come back as soon as possible. So this is what is out of our control. In our control now, I think it's time to talk to each other more, to understand that we have tough decisions ahead of us. So anyone that's giving an opinion can help us to take nice decisions, but we have to take care of our costs as much as we can. There's a chance now to adapt more technology, because what happened in the last 30 days is that the digital came into us in what was expected for 4 years, we had in 30 days. So now we have apps, we have much more technology to help us to control our costs, to help us to reduce redundancies that we may have, and to help us to work more collectively. So this is the idea now. I think we should try to lower our costs using technology, being smart, taking care with our cash in order to be well prepared for a tough time that we're going to have ahead of us.
Yeah.
And as soon as this finishes, I think we have good times for agriculture again, because, you know, this is the conjuncture, what's happening now. But when you look 5 to 10 years ahead of us, there's plenty of space for the US, for Brazil, because we have all these 9 billion people world going to cities, needing more food. So I think there's nothing changed in the, let's say, 2021 to 2031. But 2020 will be difficult, and this would be my, let's say, my medicine for this moment, these recommendations that I just gave.
So investments on innovation will be still growing and maybe going fast.
Well, I think so, because this last 30, 45 days, I've never seen so many creative new things coming. So companies switching, farmers learning how to do online meetings, salespeople working digitally, companies becoming even more efficient with the home office. So this is why I told you before that I think we have a new normal coming after the virus. We're going to be much more digital. We're going to be much more simple. It's simplicity, I think, is a word that's going to come, and the behavior is going to be much different. So I think the crisis, and I'm always positive, optimistic person, I think that this tough times that we are living as a society, we will have positive, it's not going to be only negative. We're going to have very positive solutions coming, and some of them were the ones that I pointed here. We're going to be more simple. I think we're going to be more social. We're going to act more collectively. We're going to have more technology and more innovation, as you asked me. So I'm positive in this part of the virus issue.
So Marcos, is there anything would you like to add to our viewers? I thank you a lot for your time.
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm available here to try to help if I can contribute more. The idea is that we have, I think, a very positive future, but let's go through this next 60 to 90 days, hoping that our colleagues from the medical area come with a solution, because we have a hard work to do in our area, that's the economic area. So we have to work together with them. They bring us the solution to keep people alive, and we bring the solution for the economy to move up again, creating opportunities for people. This is what we should do, and agriculture is a big business both in Brazil and the US, in order to help to include more people and to bring even peace in the world. Because, you know, if we transfer part of the gains of efficiency that we have in agriculture to prices, we remove people from hunger all over the world. So we have a role. We have a nice future ahead of us. Let's suffer a little bit now, but learn with our suffering and come back better. This is what I would like to give as a last message.
Again, Marcos is a farm business professor at the University of São Paulo and a visiting professor at Purdue University. Thanks again.
My pleasure.